Burgoyne Diller. Burgoyne A. Diller, January 13, 1906 – January 30, 1965, was an American abstract painter. Many of his best-known works are characterized by orthogonal, geometric forms that reflect his strong interest in the Stijl movement and the work of Piet Mondrian in particular. Overall, his geometric abstraction and non-objective style also owe much to his study with Hans Hofmann. He was a founding member of the American abstract artists. Diller's abstract work has sometimes been termed constructivist. He also did figurative and representational works early in his career, working as a muralist for the New York City Federal Arts Project. Life. Diller was born in the Bronx, New York, in 1906 to Andrew Diller, a violinist and conductor, and Mary Burgoyne. His father died in 1908, while Diller was just 3 years old. His mother would then marry an engineer named Adrian Nye. In 1919, he and his new family moved to Battle Creek, Michigan. When he was a child, he once had an illness that caused him to miss a year of school. During this period, he began to draw. This was his first exposure to the world of art, and he exhibited a natural talent for it. Diller attended Battle Creek High School and Michigan State University. He graduated from Michigan State University in 1927 and moved to Buffalo, New York, where he lived with his maternal grandfather. In Buffalo, Diller worked many odd jobs before landing a steady position as a janitor. At this time, he began to sell a few of his artworks, and eventually this income allowed him to move to New York City, where he began studying at the Art Students League in 1929. He enjoyed success and recognition at the League and was awarded a scholarship job at the school's bookstore. Diller ended up leaving the Art Students League in 1933 and took up a position with the Works Progress Administration (WPA). However, in 1941 Diller, along with other WPA supervisors, was suspended from the WPA due to an alleged communist infiltration of the WPA. After an investigation, no evidence was found to incriminate Diller, and he was soon reinstated. In 1943, Diller enlisted in the U.S. Navy and was assigned to the Training Aids Development Center. There he invented a handheld Morse code training device that led to 3 million of the devices being created. He was awarded a patent for the invention in 1945. He was released from active duty after World War II in November 1945 as a lieutenant junior grade and remained in the Naval Reserve. During his time in active duty, he stopped creating art altogether. However, once the war ended, he took up art once again. In 1946, Diller was hired as an assistant professor at Brooklyn College and was soon promoted to a full-time position. He was granted tenure at the college in 1949. He remained on the faculty until his death in 1965. In 1930, Diller married Sarah Sally Bernadette Conboy, who worked in the classified department of the New York Times. Her steady income helped the couple maintain a modest lifestyle throughout the Depression. By the early 1950s, Diller began creating art at a very inconsistent rate due to mounting personal problems, excessive alcohol consumption, and a sense of rejection by an art world dominated by abstract expressionists. In 1959, Diller's studio flooded, and none of the artwork he had stored in his basement could be salvaged. Contributing to the problems in his life was Sally's own alcoholism, which led to her death in 1954 of cirrhosis of the liver, just months after she had retired from the New York Times. They never had any children. That same summer, while visiting his mother and stepfather in Michigan, Diller met Grace Kelso Crone, who had just separated from her husband. Once her divorce was finalized, she and Diller married in 1955. They two never had any children together. In his later years, Diller moved to Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, where his home and studio were both near the shore. By 1965, Diller's health had seriously declined after years of smoking and alcohol abuse. He died that very year at the age of 59 due to complications of heart disease and pulmonary edema while at the French hospital in Manhattan. Stijl, a pioneer of American modernism, Burgoyne Diller devoted his career to the exploration of geometric abstraction in paintings, drawings, collages, and sculptures. For Diller, abstraction was the ideal realm of harmony, stability, and order in which every form and spatial interval could be controlled and measured. His style began with forms projects. In 1934, Diller served as supervisor for mural painting for the Temporary Emergency Relief Administration (TERA). The following year TERA was replaced by the Federal Art Project (FAP), but Diller kept his position as supervisor. He held this position until 1940. During his tenure at the WPA, Diller championed abstract art and oversaw the execution of more than 200 public murals, most of which were completed as part of this large undertaking. In the late 1930s, he supervised the artwork for the Williamsburg housing project in Brooklyn, New York 1937–1939. Among the principal artists Diller selected for this project were Jan Matulke, Stuart Davis, and Paul Kelp, who were all permitted to execute their own designs. Other artists who had the support of Diller for projects as part of the Federal Art Project were Arshile Gorky, Ilya Bolotowski, Jackson Pollock, and Willem de Kooning. Some of the major abstract murals supervised by Diller during this time include those at the Newark Airport by Gorky and the Williamsburg housing project by Bolotowski. With the entry of the United States into World War II, areas of the WPA were transferred to the War Service Division, and from 1941 until 1943, Diller directed the New York City War Service Art Project. Another major project involving Diller was the formation of the American Abstract Artists in 1930. This group was devoted to the support and propagation of abstract art in the United States. However, Diller's administrative duties to the Federal Art Project kept him from being an active member of the group, and in 1940 he dropped out. He would eventually rejoin in 1947. Views on the subject of art itself. Diller has said that he always had the feeling that art really develops through a kind of general activity. You can have your isolated geniuses, but it's always been somehow or other a product of a kind of ferment. Diller, he understood the struggles of being an artist in the early 20th century. In an interview with Harlan Phillips, Diller noted one thing that certainly characterized art during his lifetime was lack of work, lack of money just to get the necessities of life. I mean, you learned to eat practically nothing so you could buy a tube of paint, and so on and so forth. You had a little part-time job, or you'd pick up all sorts of crazy things in order. He felt that compared to other artists, abstract artists struggled the most to gain publicity in the American art world. Diller said if you happened to be concerned at all about the contemporary movements in art during his life, which then, of course, were Cubism and so on, why there was absolutely no place to show your work. Influences. Diller found inspiration in the work of Russian constructivist Kazimir Malevich and in the work of the Stijl artists Piet Mondrian and Theo van Doesburg. Diller also was greatly influenced by his teachers in the Art Students League Hans Hofmann and Jan Matulke. Hofmann, in particular, was so influential in Diller's life that when Diller had his solo exhibition at the Contemporary Arts Museum Houston in New York City, he had Hofmann write the introduction for the catalogue. Critical reception. During Diller's lifetime, abstract art was not very popular. Abstract artists struggled to gain any form of publicity. Diller noted your so-called big institutions were supposed to have done so much for the artists. You know, in the past, the Museum of Modern Art and so on, I don't think they had a prohibition against showing American abstract painters, but they didn't show them. They showed very, very few of them. Although Diller had numerous exhibitions before and after World In a review of the Burgoyne Diller exhibit in the Paula Cooper Gallery in November 2001, art critic Donald Cuspit said the following about Diller's attempt to replicate the stylings of his idol Mondrian. Diller was the first American to take Mondrian as his model. Already in the 1930s, he was producing works with a geometric sophistication similar to that of the legacy. Burgoyne Diller's work testifies not only to his versatility as an artist, but also to his unique ability to personalize the international language of neoplasticism and instill his simplified geometric compositions with emotion, spirituality, and a sense of the heroic. Diller will always be remembered as one of the most significant artists devoted to. Philip Larson notes that Diller's work serves as a vital link between American abstraction of the 1930s and minimalism of the 1950s and 1960s, epitomized by artists Donald Judd, Ellsworth Kelly, and Myron Stout. After his death, he left behind a significant body of work that includes paintings, drawings, collages, and sculptures. Over the years, his work has been exhibited internationally, most notably by the Whitney Museum of American Art in 1990. His work is represented in numerous museum collections, including the Art Institute of Chicago, the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Museum of Modern Art. Collections: Whitney Museum of American Art, New York; Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York; National Gallery of Art, Washington, D.C.; Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden, Washington, D.C. References and sources: